Wisdom of the Middle Way. Nagarjuna's Mulamadhyamakarika. Translation and commentary by J. L. Garfield. Part 2, the text and commentary. Chapter 23, Examination of Errors. This chapter continues the investigation of the relation between cyclic existence and nirvana by asking whether the fundamental defilements and the four basic cognitive errors, which according to orthodox Buddhist doctrine bind us to samsara, themselves inherently exist, and by asking how it is possible to abandon them and enter nirvana. The fundamental defilements are desire, hatred, and confusion, the desire for things that are not desirable, the aversion to things to which it is not reasonable to be averse, confusion about the actual nature of entities. These, according to most strains of Buddhist philosophy, are the basis of afflicted action, which in turn leads to further grasping and error. The four basic errors or erroneous philosophical theses are: 1. There is a permanent self among the five personal aggregates. 2. There is real happiness in samsara. 3. The body is pure, that is, that it is a real source of happiness. 4. There is a permanent self distinct from the aggregates.
If these defilements and errors were inherent properties of the self, that might serve as a ground for the inherent existence of samsara and its phenomena, to the extent that samsara is grounded in these phenomena. Moreover, though, if these defilements and errors were inherently existent, it is hard to see how nirvana is possible, since it requires their elimination. But on the other hand, if these defilements do not exist, it is hard to see why there is samsara at all and why we are not already in nirvana. And if they are merely illusions, why isn't the distinction between samsara and nirvana merely an illusion? Why isn't suffering merely an illusion? In short, why isn't illusion merely an illusion? This chapter is devoted to answering these fundamental questions in Buddhist soteriological theory.
1. Desire, hatred, and confusion all arise from thought, it is said. They all depend on the pleasant, the unpleasant, and errors. Without reifying entities, a cognitive operation, there is no basis for desire for those entities, of aversion from them, and no confusion regarding their mode of existence. Seeing things as pleasant or unpleasant in themselves depends upon confusing our desire or aversion with respect to them with properties they have in themselves. The desire and aversion in turn depend upon our attributing pleasantness and unpleasantness to the entities. It is a tight and vicious circle of attribution and emotional reaction, all depending upon reification. 2. Since whatever depends on the pleasant and the unpleasant does not exist through an essence, the defilements do not really exist. But it follows from this that the defilements, in virtue of depending on these attributions and upon our relation to pleasant and unpleasant things, all of which are themselves empty, are empty of inherent existence. Indeed, they are not only dependently arisen, but depend upon things or features of those things already shown to be empty.
3. The self's existence or non-existence has in no way been established. Without that, how could the defilement's existence or non-existence be established? Moreover, the defilements are meant to be defilements of the self. But the self, the putative basis of those defilements, cannot exist inherently. So the defilements, being attributes of an empty phenomenon, cannot be non-empty. The following verse reiterates that position. For, the defilements are somebody's. But that one has not been established. Without that possessor, the defilements are nobody's. In the first line, an interlocutor points out that if there are defilements at all, there must be somebody whose defilements they are. Nagarjuna replies that we have already shown that there is no subject for personal attributes in the many discussions of the relation between the self and its states previous to this, chapters 3, 4, 8, 9, 12, 13, 16, 17, and 18. So, whatever analysis of defilement we develop, it will have to be one according to which they presuppose no defiled individual.
5. View the defilements as you view yourself. They are not in the defiled in the fivefold way. View the defiled as you view yourself. It is not in the defilements in the fivefold way. This verse recalls and applies the fivefold analysis of the self developed in the previous chapter to the analysis of the defilements and the defiled. They are not identical to the aggregates, completely different from the aggregates, present as a basis of the aggregates, contained in the aggregates as a core, or separate from or dependent upon the aggregates. The arguments concerning the relation of the self to the aggregates can simply be applied directly either to the defilements or to the defiled.
6. The pleasant, the unpleasant, and the errors do not exist through essence. Which pleasant, unpleasant, and errors could the defilements depend upon? Nor can we say that the defilements are inherently existent in virtue of being grounded in inherently existent pleasantness, unpleasantness, and error. While it is true that the latter are the basis of the defilements, they, too, Nagarjuna will argue, are empty. 7. Form, sound, taste, touch, smell, and concepts of things, these 6 are thought of as the foundation of desire, hatred, and confusion. 8. Form, sound, taste, touch, smell, and concepts of things, these 6 should be seen as only like a city of the Gandharvas and like a mirage or a dream. Sensory contact, perception, and cognition are the causal grounds of the defilements. But as was shown in chapter 3, they are empty as well.
9. How could the pleasant and unpleasant arise in those that are like an illusory person and like a reflection? Since the self and others have been demonstrated to be empty, in pleasantness and unpleasantness must be properties of one, the other, or both, there can be no inherently existent basis for pleasantness or unpleasantness. They themselves must also therefore be empty. 10. We say that the unpleasant is dependent upon the pleasant. Since without depending on the pleasant there is none, it follows that the pleasant is not tenable. 11. We say that the pleasant is dependent upon the unpleasant. Without the unpleasant there wouldn't be any. It follows that the unpleasant is not tenable. Moreover, pleasant and unpleasant are mutually dependent. Nagarjuna here claims that pleasant and unpleasant are not absolute but rather comparative terms and, hence, essentially interdefined. If this is so, then since their reference depend upon each other for their satisfaction of these descriptions, neither property can exist inherently.
12. Where there is no pleasant, how can there be desire? Where there is no unpleasant, how can there be anger? And since these are the bases for desire and anger, arising from empty phenomena, must themselves be seen as empty. 13. If to grasp onto the view, the impermanent is permanent, were an error, since in emptiness there is nothing impermanent, how could that grasping be an error? This verse adverts to the first of the 4 principal errors, that one of the 5 aggregates, typically consciousness, is permanent. The reason that it is held by Buddhists to be an error, of course, is that all of the aggregates are analyzed as impermanent, hence the formulation in the second line, whose definite description must be read to re. But, Nagarjuna argues, since there are no actual impermanent phenomena from the ultimate point of view, this can't actually be seen as the false attribution of a property, permanence, to a real entity that actually has a contrary property.